Hi, property people. Thanks for joining us today. As always, we will be sharing ideas, experiences, problems, and solutions for property people like you. Our interviews will get you to know some of the most active professionals in the industry that have achieved some pretty impressive stuff. Hearing about their successes, failures, strategies, and insights, we really hope you enjoy. Just sat down with Lamar Joseph, an interesting guy, ex-Foxtons, letting agent in some of the top areas of London. And he's got visions of the 21st century digital media taking over the world, and he wants to be at the forefront of it. So it was really interesting to hear his experiences as an estate agent and insight as to how all of that works. And how he's looking at a few people that are making big waves in the digital media space in the property world, and how he wants to be part of that and some of the sacrifices he's taking to make that happen. So very interesting to sit down with young, hungry, cutting edge, successful, forward thinking people. And I hope you enjoy the interview. As always, do please click subscribe, like, follow. Leave us a comment, leave us a review. The more traction this all gets, the more places we go together. Have a great day and enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Property People. Today, I am joined by Lamar Joseph. Lamar Joseph is a presenter for video series showcasing luxury properties in local areas with amenities and local businesses around London. An ex-Foxtons estate agent immersed in central London real estate. Now focusing on 21st century media technology to transform the way in which we look at luxury properties and their local areas are shown online. And that's his passion and his drive. And we actually met in a networking event online, funnily enough.
Yep.
It was Canary Connections by Barry Ray. Big shout out to him. He does a really good job of connecting
Massive
people.
shout out to Barry.
And we got to talking. I liked your youth. I liked your energy. I love the fact that you work for Foxtons. I always find people who work for Foxtons very interesting. So how are you today, Lamar? Thanks for joining us.
I'm very good. Thank you very much for the intro. That was a intro I wasn't expecting. I was expecting me to introduce myself, but you've literally laid out the floor perfectly. So thank you very much, Sam. But honestly, I'm really good. The weather is amazing at the moment. It's not often we get such nice weather, so I'm not complaining one bit. And it's just, honestly, it just feels like such a good time to try and get stuff done. And I think as well, just in general, just like the business, in which we'll probably go into discussing, things are taking the steps in the right direction, which is always a positive. So yeah, no complaints on my end at all.
Happy days. Yes, it is hot out there, but
it
we're in here because it's everything that we're doing is heating up. You're in a position right now where I think you're touching on some exciting stuff that I see floating around the property market, and not just in the UK, across the world. But before we go into all of that, one of the things I always like to start with is, who were you at school? What kind of person were you? Did you always think you'd be in property? Did you always want to be an estate agent for Foxtons when you were growing up?
So I guess the first question is, who was I at school? And then I'm going to get into the Foxtons. So should we go that way?
Yes, do that.
So how do I put it? I was quite cheeky in school, quite forward thinking as well. But at the same time, I had a very good relationship with most of my classmates, etc. I actually moved, in secondary school. I moved from my first secondary school, which was Westminster City. That was a boys' school, right basically around the corner from Westminster. And then I moved to a secondary school in St. John's Wood. So I had the experience of two secondary schools as well, and one primary. But I would say overall, I had a good group of friends. I'm still in touch with quite a few of my friends that I had from secondary school as well. So I like to, I do cherish the relationships I keep around me, especially for those who I've known for a good while as well. We've grown up together. But yeah, so that was that. And then I got to sixth form area. I was applying for UCAS. I wasn't really too, kind of motivated to go to university. I just didn't feel like it was the best investment of my time at that time. I know obviously school was promoting it quite heavily, was having kind of seminars and UCAS people coming in and teachers talking about their university experiences and stuff. And for me, it wasn't necessarily the experience that I was looking to miss out on. It was more from my perspective, with the 3 years or 4 years I'll be doing this course, do I feel like these will be the next best 4 years of my life and what I want to do. And I think, just studying a course just because I was, good at history and English and public speaking during, my A levels doesn't necessarily mean I want to now take that on for the next step. So then what happened is I eventually gave in to the constant, call it pressure. I wouldn't call it pressure, no, but just the constant kind of, reassurance and the request to apply for UCAS, even if I didn't want to go for that year.
It's called encouragement. Encouragement.
Encouragement is the word, yes. Encouragement. Educational encouragement, to be specific as well. But yeah, so then we got to the point where kind of my head of year, my tutor, and I think even one of like the deputy heads sat me down and was like, right, you actually need to apply. Like you're the last one left in the year. And I was like, oh, I've managed to survive to the end. I was like, fine, I'll apply at least. But I applied for kind of the deferred entry. So I already negotiated with them from then. So I was like, I don't want to go in September because it's too soon for me to make a decision. Can I have a delayed entry so I have some time to think about my decision? And then obviously deferred my entry to the following year. So in that year, after I'd left and done my A levels, I got my place at Portsmouth to study history and international relations. I then started working for Harvey Nichols at the Oxo Tower restaurant on the South Bank, 8th floor. You've got a restaurant, brasserie and bar, beautiful. Like I would genuinely, even though I've worked there before, I would recommend anyone to go there if they haven't been, because it is spectacular views that I would argue that you probably can't get at any other restaurant. Because although it's, I know you've got like the Shard and you've got a lot of like views over London and nice views into gardens. I think with this view in particular, because it's 8th floor, it's a really intimate view because you can actually see a more realistic sense rather than just high up and everything's just kind of going into the cloud and pollution that covers London, of course.
I can already see your almost passion for real estate coming through there, where you're looking at views and you're looking at feeling and experiences and emotions when it comes to where you are in a building, which is yeah, okay. I can see signs of it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And then so I did that for 2 years. I then decided to cancel my place at Portsmouth. I said, look, this is not a course I want to study. I had to be honest with myself and say, look, throughout this time that I've taken away whilst I've been working, have I actually taken my time out to go and read up on the subjects, for history and international relations and get myself prepared? I just had to be honest and say, no, I'm not. And I'm only going because of what's been told. And actually, because I was earning a bit of money, I said, right, let me focus a bit more on maybe, working for now. So I did another year. And then I'd left. So once I'd left, I then kind of had a little bit of period off where I was kind of doing a bit of self-studies. And then I started working for Foxtons in May 2017. I didn't expect to work there, and it never came to my mind whatsoever. I never dreamt whatever to be an estate agent. It had no form coming to my mind at all. But what I did have, and what I now realize why it was a good match, is I have a very good kind of relationship with people. I like to deal with people. I'm very positive about meeting new people, engaging with people, and especially because I've come from a hospitality background, making sure people have the best time. That's for me. That's just it's just a natural given, and treating people how you want to be treated as well. I think I learned a lot of things in that sense. So, as a result, I started Foxtons, and that was through a recommendation of a friend who worked there. Started off in the Fulham office. At that time, they had two, so I started off in their newly opened Fulham office, which is basically near Craven Cottage, the Bishop's Park area. Worked there for about a year and 8 months or so. When it got to about, let's say, a year, I started to kind of say to my directors, hey, I'd like to move to one of the offices in Kensington and Chelsea because those guys are banking some serious numbers and I'm not. And I want to be competing with these guys. At first, I got told no, about 2.5 times. But on the second time, I said, right, well, this could call it second and a half. I said to my director, right, I appreciate you told me no, but this isn't something I'm not going to stop asking you for this. So if you can set me a benchmark, at least that I can work towards that you can agree on for us to have this conversation again, then I'd be more than happy. He said, you know what? Fine. If you get your average up to, I think at the time it was 20,000 a month banking average, then obviously we can have that discussion. So I managed to do that within the space of 6 weeks, managed to get my average up at that time, and then had the conversation. Then moved to Earls Court officially, which was in the same year. So that was 2018, November. First 5 weeks I moved to the office, I did one deal. It was terrible. I don't know. That was probably one of the worst periods of my career. Obviously, except for the start where obviously you're learning, you make mistakes at the early stage. But at that point, I'd already kind of got my teeth gripped in because I'd obviously done quite well in Fulham to even get justified, to move over. But as a result, I then, didn't do a deal or did one deal for 5 weeks. And then my director called me in with my manager and he was like, right, you were nagging me constantly to move to the office. You've moved here, you've done one deal in 5 weeks. He was like, you're not going back to that office, but I want to see these numbers improve because otherwise I may reconsider that option. And I said to him, this honestly, I'm actually disgusted by this performance, and this will be the last time you have this conversation with me. I can promise you that. And he was like, I want to see it. And that was
Wait
the
there.
last time he spoke to me.
So basically, you went 5 weeks. I always, for some reason, call me a little bit, I don't know, male, but I always refer everything back to football. But you're a striker
Hmm.
and you don't score a goal for 5 games,
Yeah,
and they're like, you know what? Unfortunately, if you don't start scoring, we're gonna have to stick you on the bench. Basically,
100%.
yeah, you get demoted or something.
Pretty
So
much.
you went through this dry spell, and he sat you down, and it was quite assertive in that he was like, like this kind of
Thing can't happen here, yeah.
yeah, you basically, we need people that can perform
They
better.
perform better, yeah, because these are the top offices. These are the top offices in Foxtons, and anyone who's worked at Foxtons and the alumni is quite large would know that the central London offices are banking some serious figures. So they want you to contribute towards that. They don't want people who necessarily aren't able to be up to scratch. Not to say that that's the case, but it's just a natural product because of the area and where we are.
Yeah,
That it is one of the top banking offices, so they'd want that. And also as well, I think it was a bit of a challenge to push me because obviously it could have maybe gone down the route of kind of what's wrong per se, but I think he knew that I could be a little bit tough because I'm quite kind of stern, a little bit regimented as well, because that comes from like when I used to do army cadets from when I was younger. So
right.
I'm kind of used to a bit more of a kind of a tough love approach and get results done.
Fair play.
So
And how many people are in which office was it that you'd moved to?
I
Kensington,
moved to Earls Court, yeah. So Earls
Earls
Court,
Court.
so
And
Earls
then
Court, where we used to basically. So go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how many people are in the Earls Court office?
So negotiators, there were 5 other negotiators, but that's not the end of the story because within our area, we basically shared our kind of patch and applicants with South Kensington and Sloane Square. So our offices at the time, maybe sometimes even Notting Hill, because if someone's looking Kensington, Chelsea, those are the 4 offices that cover it. So at push, let's say between Earls Court and South Kensington, you're looking well over, 15 to 16 negotiators. And then if it's, Sloane Square included and Notting Hill, could be between 20 and 25. And that sometimes you can be competing with the same, with the same applicant or different negotiators for similar properties in South Kensington, Sloane Square, Notting Hill. But I would mainly stay between Earls Court and South Ken because it was just the most mobile. Made
And
sense.
then, so let's assume for you got 4 officers, you got 5
Hmm.
negotiators in each, so you got 20 negotiators, all having healthy competition with one another.
Yeah.
And when you've got that, and let's say an applicant registers and they say, right, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom house, and I've got £5 million to spend. Um, who gets ownership out of the 20 people? Who gets ownership over, or do you get any kind of ownership over that one contact, or is it a free for all?
It's not necessarily a free for all. I would say it's a little bit more organized. It's normally going to be one person from each office, so it's not
Right.
that competitive. Every office has an assigned negotiator, so that reduces the amount of calls or somebody's getting because then it would be a bit too frantic. But again, you would normally share an applicant between the neighbouring offices. That's pretty standard, and it's quite efficient as well. Because sometimes when you've got a list of a lot of properties, there's only so much time you have as well. So another
Yeah.
negotiator can show their stock. So it's quite efficient, to be fair. So yeah, that's that. And I think so. Even just to touch back on, after my director had the discussion with me,
Yes.
so that was kind of December, just before we broke up. After that, I think the next month, so January, I finished first out of the division for that month's bankings, and then that was 2019 that started. And 2019, by the end of it, I'd finished as top neg in the whole division. So that's what I
Wow.
said. The last time my director spoke to me was in November 2018, and the rest of it was as I said I would do.
Very interesting. So the next question that comes to my mind is, after that conversation, obviously you had a change of mindset. You were like, from the army cadets, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to let somebody tell me that, I can't do this, or, that tough love is going to be your motivator and driver. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the actual steps that you took in your mind to actually, the actions to say, right, I'm going to make a difference now? Were you making more phone calls? Were you staying early, like arriving early, leaving late? What was the changes that you made to make yourself more productive?
Definitely. I would say a lot of it had to do, I guess, doing more calls at the time as well, trying to book as many viewings. I think also the market had picked up when I started doing really well as well, because November to December predominantly is the quietest time of the year. Not to say that's an excuse, But I think even within myself as well, I kind of just overlooked and I threw away the fact that, I hadn't done deals for 5 weeks. I just threw that thought and held on to that thought and just threw it to the bin. For me personally, just holding on to the thought that I hadn't performed well was actually affecting my future performance, because I was looking at it like, okay, I haven't done deals, or what's wrong with me? And because I'm going in with that constant mindset and not accepting that that's actually just part of the business and you need to push forward, that was, the resilience that I then built. So from that point onwards, I said, I don't care if I get any fall throughs, any clawbacks, or if, whatever happens, I'm just going to keep going, keep going, keep going. Because if you stop and, focus on the negativity, you'll miss out on all the potential opportunities, and it will affect the way that you deal with people as well. Because this is a people business. So even with estate agents, even more so than anything. And I find that when you just kind of let go to an extent of focusing so much on, your past performance, rather than, I started looking at it more on an individual basis. How can I make this viewing the best viewing? How can I make this experience with this person the best experience? How can I get them to trust me, and give them the best advice, and as a
I'm
result, get them the
curious.
best result?
So I'm curious, what are the answers to those questions? Like, when you're arriving to a viewing, give me an example of something that you did. I mean, the thing is, I resonate with a lot of that because I started out as an estate agent, and I do think I did have things that I did, but I'd like to hear from you first, and I can tell you a few things that I thought would help.
Good question. Because I've been out for a little bit, almost touching a year now. I have to actually think back, but I would say try and obviously arrive early where possible. I always say where possible because it's an industry where you can't control every single instance that happens. If you are going to be late, communicate it as early as possible. So these are the two things. Because I think that just comes down to the appreciation and respect that you have for somebody else's time, and communicating that as fast as possible is always the best way to keep the relationship well. When you get to the property, obviously just ask you how you're doing, and then talk about your search. And then other than that, I would actually just have a general conversation with you, depending on obviously the type of applicant. Sometimes you may be busy, some people are a little bit more closed off, and you have to kind of read the situation. But I think with some people as well, you can be a little bit cheeky, you can be yourself. Like, you have to have some character. You can't be a boring estate agent, just like, hi, my name's Lamar, I'm looking for a property. Okay, what do you want? When do you want to move in? It's like you don't have any life or character or soul about you. Like, even when you're on the phone, I actually miss the handsets. That's the one thing that I miss out of everything, is the handset. The handset that is the best telephone ever invented. Like, I like phones, but you can really communicate yourself well on a handset. But again, you just have fun with it. You just make people laugh. You make them feel relaxed. And also as well, I always used to make the effort of reassuring them, look, I can explain to you the process. I can try and make this as easy as possible for you, because I'm aware that, renting or looking for a property, because I was in lettings at the time, is a very stressful process, especially when you have to move within a time frame. You're dealing with multiple agents, and on top of that, you have to work and live your life as well. It's a very intrusive thing to happen all at once. And as soon as you register with estate agents, regardless of who it is, your phone will start to ring because you need somewhere to live. So as a result, I always used to, be like, there's only so much times you're going to want to speak to me. My voice is bloody annoying, and the quicker you get this done is the quicker I get out of your face. People normally laugh about it because it's just like, oh, this guy's actually like, you just make it personable, and that's it. But also as well, I think again, it comes down to actually trying to understand what the search is. So rather than just having 100 people on my app box and trying to take out all 100, I would really try and focus on those who give me as much information so I can help them as best as possible. Because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to just take you out because you've registered for a 3-bed and I'm just going to show you every single 3-bed. Because if you've got certain requirements, whether it's, you don't want an open plan kitchen, or if there's a member of your family that has disability, or if it's, you can't climb a flight of stairs, or whatever it is, or you don't want to do lower ground, well, lower ground is sometimes negotiable depending on what you show. But even still, as a result, you can really find out what the search requirements are. And also, I think one of the key things I used to do is, where are you moving from? Like, what's your situation now? Because for me, if I can understand your situation now and understand why you're moving, to an extent, it helps me picture what you're used to and what you're accustomed to. Because I think with one thing with a estate agent in particular, there's price and requirements. Requirements are most important, but price obviously is very much important as well. But sometimes you can find that there may be a slight mismatch with what your requirements may be and the price of what it may be on the market. So that's where it goes into, showing options. Because as well, if you inquire about one property, as much as you want to see that one property, I think you want to see options to feel comfortable that the decision you're making.
I couldn't agree more, and that's something that I think estate agents, to a certain extent, get a bit of a bad rap. And the only explanation I can have for that is that when some young estate agents are being trained, their managers that are telling them, that you've got to, get people into, if they want a 2-bed, offer them that 2-bed. But they said they want an outdoor space and it doesn't have outdoor space, just offer it them anyway. And then people just call up and offer it anyway. But I think what you're trying to say, which I agree with, it's how you offer it, and it's giving people options. And you're saying, look, you know what, your budget is X amount, and if you squeeze, you might be able to get it, but you're not sure you want to go that high. So I do have another
100%.
2-bed, and it's a big 2-bed, right? So you don't get maybe the outdoor space, but you get some real big space and this, that, and the other. So I just wanted to run it by you. And if you say it like that, rather than, hey, you've got to come and view it, and this is going to be, I don't know. I just think that
100%.
sometimes estate agents get a bad rap, and the way that you're describing it is probably the way it should be done.
Oh, thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate it. And that's the way I would see it as well. If I was on the other foot and I was looking for properties, I'd want to see relatively as many options as possible. And I think as well, it comes down to, again, communication. You have to be able to communicate to people that there needs to be flexibility within their requirements, especially if there is, kind of a solid, fix on the price, or there's very little room to maneuver. If there's a lot of room to maneuver, then you can be as straightforward with your requirements, but there may be a price higher than you may expect depending on where you're looking. And that comes down to location. And I think as well, it's just setting up people's expectations, because I think that's the key thing as well. Because I think one of the things I used to find is most people inquire on the same property that they see is amazing. I know everyone thinks that they're like the first one to it. They'll see an amazing property, like 2-bed, 500 a week, South Kent. It looks brand spanking new, which will probably never happen. But you get that one property that comes on the portal and every person inquires on it. And then you have to explain to everyone that, look, this is already gone. This is why it's already gone, because most of the time as well with estate agents, that the property goes online after the keys have been handed in. So normally viewings start when the keys are handed in, and then it goes on the portal. Sometimes that can be between 1, 7, 10, sometimes even 2 weeks, depending on the agent, or even more. But as a result, it just comes down to clear communication to allow them to understand where they are. That even comes down to as well when they're offering, or when they're about to make an offer, explaining to them kind of what the position is, what the motivation is of the vendor or the landlord, where their position stands, how many viewings we've done so far, what else we've also rented in the area, and kind of what the applicant numbers are searching at the moment. Because the likelihood is, I know everyone always comes to you as the individual, like it's their search and they want you to work magic, which is absolutely fine. But I think if you can communicate well that there are this amount of people that have registered this week alone, these are the amount of properties we've brought on this week, and these are how many properties we've rented, it gives them an idea of the market. And as a result of giving them kind of a view of the market, that is where they can understand, okay, this is where they're positioned. So when they say to you, it's 500 a week, I want to go in at 410 a week, say, look, I genuinely think that you wouldn't be presenting yourself as well as X amount of other people that are coming to view the property. Because if you like it so much, who's to say that somebody else who walks through that door will like it the same as you and will want to make an offer? And as soon as you get more than one offer in, it gets the best and final, you literally have one opportunity to make your best and final offer. So I'd always sometimes say it's worth going straight, for the asking price if you want to save yourself that hassle, because you may end up trying to go low and end up having to pay more for it because you gave the landlord time to think about it, and that time was somebody else to walk through that door, make an offer, and now we're in best and final. So communication is key.
If you really like it, just go for it.
100%. Go for it. Just go for it. And that'll be it done. So yeah. But I guess it's an interesting industry though.
And you're talking about lettings there. So were you only doing lettings, or were you doing sales as well?
Just lettings. So I was just doing lettings at the time, yeah.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your your favorite property that sticks out that you rented out.
So I would say there's 3. One in particular was one I rented on Fulham Road. It's literally like 2-minute walk away from Stamford Bridge, if that. It was stunning. I don't even know how to describe it. It was done by like an architect and interior designer, but the way it was done, I've never seen a house done like that before. It was completely restructured from inside out. The second, I would say,
how much was that on the market for rental?
1,750 a week at the time. I think it was around that period. That's what we kind of I believe we rented it for around that period. And then I'm trying to think what else. You hit me on the spot. And the thing is, there's a couple as well.
But I was only looking for one, to be fair, and £1,750 for how many bedrooms was that?
4 bedrooms.
So that's £7,500 a month.
a
And so
month.
typically the clientele in these areas, I mean, they're not footballers at that price, but they're certainly like high flying CEO, managing directors, business owners,
Yeah.
actors, maybe, I don't know, musicians.
I hadn't had any actors or musicians. We had a lot of diplomats actually. Funny enough,
Okay.
actually, I would say yeah. So it wasn't something that went through, but I had an applicant. So I had an applicant who was a diplomat, military attaché, rented him a property, and then I think I may have discussed this with you because we got on so well, and he felt like I gave him such a great service. A year later, I'd actually received an email from the secretary to the ambassador at the time saying, you rented the flat to our diplomat or such, and he really gave a heartfelt recommendation about your service. And we'd actually like to request for your assistance to help us find a new embassy premises. The entire embassy. I was like, oh, I sent it to my manager, and he was like, mate, well done. He was like, just take my hat off to you. So that was definitely like the highlight. Even though we wasn't able to, secure the deal in the end, that was because of COVID-19. And at that point, I think all governments were kind of tackling with it, and that was the priority. We had to fall that through. But even still, as a result, that in itself was one of the massive highlights. And I think, yeah, in terms of properties, honestly, I'd have to think, because I've seen so many when I go through like the deal files, it's insane.
And so, and one of the stories on the street, or the myths, maybe the fact is that at Foxtons you're working like 7 days a week. Is that the case? Like long hours?
Very long hours, definitely. I don't know how it is exactly now. I don't think it's changed as much. It's not 7 days, so that got cancelled, I believe, the year just before I started. That you had to work on Sundays and Saturdays, but we used to do 6 days and 5 days, 6 days and 5 days, and then I think after you're there for maybe about 5 years or so, you get 1 in 3 weekends you have to work, or something like that, depending on I think your position as well. But yes, so that we used to work hard, definitely. And sometimes I'd even go into the office like on a Sunday if I've got an offer. I'll send it to my manager. I'll probably get it agreed. I'll be like, cool, you can drive down to the office, put it under offer. Like, I know technically you wasn't meant to do it, but I mean, I was like, look, I'm going to get this done so that they get this secured, because if there's an offer on my phone and it comes up, I don't care if it's a Sunday at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I'm sending it. I'm not going to call the landlord, but I'm letting them listen. I'll send a text and say I've got an offer. So the next morning, like, we'll try and tie up as soon as possible, because speed in letting is everything. You need to have speed.
I get that. I get the impression and the feeling that you are very good with people, and
Thank
you are
you.
very much a people person, and that makes I think for a very good estate agent, if I'm honest.
Well, thank you, Steve.
And one of the things you said earlier on as well, which was that you still have really good long-term friendships with people that you grew up with and that kind of thing. In terms of colleagues from Foxtons, in terms of the turnover of staff, are there still people there that you know and that you still get on with, or is that like a totally different team and everyone's moved on?
No. There are new faces, but there's still quite a lot of people that were there when I'd left. I still keep in touch with a few people as well. I even keep in touch with my old manager as well. I've got a really good relationship with him. A few people from my office, and then a few people from other offices as well that I keep in touch with. So yeah, 100%.
And those were the Foxton days. Why did you decide to leave? Because you're obviously doing really well. You got top salesman. It's it's a prestigious brand to be working for. You're working in one of the top areas of London. Why jump ship?
So it was 2018. Sorry, 2018. No, sorry, 2019 actually. That I first discovered the famous Ryan Serhant. And as soon as I started watching his videos, I said, okay, pause. I was like, this is very good. I was like, what is the equivalent to London? I was like, who is the London equivalent? So I started searching up on YouTube, and I thought about it specifically more so on YouTube, because I like the actual content creation. Obviously, I'm aware that we have Instagram here, and we've got some famous Instagram heads as well, like Daniel Daggers, Tyron Ash, for example. But I wanted to see who's actually focused on content creation, because there's an art form to it, and there's obviously an audience for it as well. And pretty much found that there's few drips and drabs, but there's not a consistent basis, or there isn't a kind of go-to person that people would know on that particular platform as kind of your go-to, and as a result would be quite beneficial for the other platforms as well. So I then pitched to my directors at the time. I said to them, look, I think this was a really good way that the industry could be going. I think we could maybe trial this and see, kind of what we could do, especially for like the top performing negs, maybe having, more of our faces out there. And they were actually quite open to the idea. My directors are really, really open. So they allowed me to do a trial video on one of the properties and managed to get a landlord to agree to it. So then I did that, presented it to them. And then COVID-19 happened, which is obviously the story of 2020, essentially. So what happened is when we came back, because obviously what happened with the business, I said, look, now's not the priority or the focus for that. We kind of want to focus on other areas. So I gave it a couple of months, but in my mind, because I had started to think about this basically a year from that point, a thought in my mind was saying, you know what? I have a feeling that it's going to come down to a point that I'm either going to have to do this myself or I'm going to have to wait an even longer period. But because of the letting side of me as well, I think that's probably what didn't help, is the fact because I have such a sense of urgency and I'm always not fearful, but I'm very, very conscious that there are competitors out there, because if you're not sharp to the ball, somebody else will get it. And I think that's what Lex taught me the most above everything. Like you need to be sharp. Like if you're not sharp, somebody else will literally pick up the business that you leave behind. And that's what it comes down to. So in that sense, I saw it as this could be a massive opportunity that somebody like me who's having the same thought now, somewhere else, wherever they're doing, could be using this to get ahead. And I can't allow that to happen. So eventually I decided, you know what, this is probably the best time. I obviously live in London as well. This is where I've grown up. So if I'm going to be taking such a massive risk, I may as well do it now whilst I've got this time in my life as well, because it's going to be the best time and I'll have no regrets. So then I decided to leave in September. I obviously got convinced no, but it was when I spoke to my director, he said to me, I think it will be a bad time for you to leave. And at first I was like, oh, this might sound interesting. Is there going to be an offer on the table? And he said, because, I think the market, it's a good market to be in. And I just said, look, I am genuinely fixed on this. Like there's no budging. I said, there is no budging whatsoever. This is not negotiable. I said, unless there's going to be something we can do in-house. But at this point, because they've done so much for me to even allow me to do a trial in the first place and get it that far, I said, I think you guys as a company, Foxtons as a company, has done more than enough, to support me throughout my whole journey and to even allow me to even take this to a trial period and even see if we can take it further. But I think at this point now, I think it's for me to take it on myself, because it's something I'm passionate about, and try and make it work. And who knows where that will lead in the future. May end up doing a partnership with Foxtons or other estate agents in the future. It's really not out of the question. But I think I wanted to focus on the property media side, because for me as well, because I'd done so well, I think from my perspective, in order for me to take it to the next level of my career and for what I see as the next challenge, because now that I've become number one, in my division, and I think I was a fourth in the year for the entire company, which is like about over 400 negotiators at the time. At that point, I said, you know what, okay, if I've managed to do this in such a short space in my career, I need to challenge myself, because I don't want to get complacent. Like if I just keep going for that number one spot, I'll hit it the next year. And then after that, I'll hit it the next year, but then there won't be much for me to look forward to. And I think I needed something to challenge. So this is why I kind of wanted to incorporate this as well, to see how far I can really push, my limits when it comes to this job in terms of I could call it the competitiveness, but that's on the kind of the friendly side, because at the essence of it, I still have to be myself. I still have to be the personal person. And it's not about me cutting corners. It's about us. It's about me more so looking at other ways that we can utilize what's around us to attract obviously more business, to get out there more. And also as well, it made me look at the bigger picture a lot more, because I used to do this as a negotiator, is when somebody comes to look for me for a property, they're not just looking for a property. I would never just take you from door to door and that's it. I'm going to show you the area. I'm going to show you the local schools. I'm going to show you trying to look local parks, or like the garden squares. I'm going to paint a picture and give you a bit more of a visual experience as to where you're going to be living, how you're going to be living, because seeing is believing for most people. You can say as much as you want, this is there and that's there, but we're human beings. And I always remember that every single person, regardless of their title or position, if you break it down, everyone's a human being. And these are things that we all, if you see it, you understand it much better. So as a result, I decided with the company of Pembridge Media, when I teamed up with my business partner who worked in the commercial real estate industry, we decided, okay, now that we've got the residential property side and then we're going to start venturing into the commercial side, let's bring it in to something more London-based first and community, because each person that works and lives in a property still does stuff outside as well. Everyone still goes for places to drink, places to eat, places to shop, places for their leisure, depending on what they want to do. Everyone has different ways they want to live their life outside of work and just living in a property these are two functional things. And I think that's where we really decided to pick it up. And naturally, we probably are going to be one of the best people to do it because we all come from London. So as a result, we've really got a massive step up in comparison to anybody else because I've grown up in the city and I was definitely a little explorer when I used to be younger. So I've been around to majority of areas in London already. So there's, even with that in itself, just knowing, where everything is to an extent, it really helps with this. So I think it comes down to now showcasing, a bit more of the local communities where we have these properties and then just moving forward.
And so you are London born and bred. Whereabouts in London?
West London.
Whereabouts in West London?
Notting Hill, to be specific.
Okay, very good. And in those parts of London, you're wanting to really showcase not just the internals of a property, not just the approach to the property, so the facade and the street view per se, but really everything about the area. So it could be the local businesses, it could be the local parks, it could be the commute to the tube station, and you want to be able to showcase that through the joys of wonderful social media and digital media.
Absolutely.
And what about, that's a really nice area, is Notting Hill. What about the areas that are not as like world famous? Literally Notting Hill, because of the film, is literally a world famous location. But if you go to somewhere like I was going to say Wembley, but that's also world famous.
World famous.
but
go on.
Edgware,
Edgware. Yep.
Like or actually, I'm from East London. Well, I say
whereabouts?
I'm from Durham. I'm from the northeast, but I've been living in East London for since 2001, on and off around North and East London. But I consider myself almost. I've lived there so many years, even though I'm living in Stratford right now. I consider myself a little bit from Wanstead. I don't know if you've been to Wanstead.
I have, yes. Wanstead is.
It's like 3 stops past Stratford, just past Leytonstone. It's a lovely little villagey kind of area. It kind of reminds me of Durham, to be honest. That's why I like it.
Yeah.
Nice big open spaces. But a lot of people don't know it because it's relatively insignificant in the grand scheme of London. And if you try to tell people where it is, they say, Stratford is the main hub
that people know.
Exactly. So it would be good in a way to put Wanstead on the map a little bit more and showcase it. So is that also your intention, to go to Edgware, go to Wanstead, go to Leyton, or these other areas?
Absolutely, 100%. Because I think that's the whole. We're trying to paint the picture of London as a whole, not just London, central London. Because yes, we're obviously going to showcase some of the famous parts of London and maybe where there's a bit more kind of stuff going on that people come to. But I think also we want to highlight the various communities and different types of areas that you have. Because as you said, Wanstead reminds you of a village. There are many areas in London that many people don't know about that have that village type feel to it, or just a whole different sense of community. And I think that's what makes London. There is no single one way to live London. There's no such thing as one London identity. It is literally multiple communities, areas, different industries that come together and form London. So as a result, we definitely intend to show more areas than just central London. We just started off here because it's our proximity and it's what's around us. But as we move on, we definitely want to be showing, different areas. Whether it's in, it could be Ealing, as you said, it could be Wanstead, it could be somewhere like, it could be Clapham or something like Dulwich, for example. Or we could move on to, let's say, North London, as you say, it could be Edgware, could even be Stanmore, anywhere in particular. We want to show the different parts of London, because I think as well, when people see that, even on the same kind of channel and similar content, they'll understand that, oh, London really is different. Because I think we've done a great job in terms of closing our doors on social media to an extent. I think there's still a lot to be shown, apart from obviously, like I said, the main hubs. I think because we're quite reserved naturally in comparison to, over in the States, where they're just naturally like showbiz, everything on camera, go, go, go. It's just natural to them. Whereas here, we're definitely more reserved. It is the British kind of classy way of doing things. But I think to an extent on the way of social media, I think we can use these platforms to really show. And also as well, a part of it does come from a competition, because that's another reason why I wanted to do this as well. When I started watching Ryan's videos, it's in my nature, I can't help it. But I said, you know what? I'm going to be cheeky. I was like, I like New York, because I went New York 3 times in 2019 as well. And I said, I do like New York. It is like a little second London to me. but second is where I would place it. Like London is way better. I said London is way better than New York. I don't want to hear it. Like, but the only reason why it's going to take a while to get there is because New York and the city is so well documented. Like, you can know about New York just by typing it online. You'll find out everything you need to. Whereas with London, it's not that easy. You've still got videos from like 5 years ago, different quality, or just different stuff. And the city has a lot to offer as well. There are so many different things that people do, so many industries people working, whether it's creative, finance, it can be construction, property. The list is endless. Education as well. The list is genuinely endless. And I think there's so many interesting people that I've met, even especially actually as a negotiator, because I meet everyone from every industry. There's no industry pretty much that I haven't met. And from that, I find it very interesting that everyone who works in these different fields works and lives in London. It's very fascinating because for me, I find these things fascinating. Just how do people move? How do people work? What kind of lives do people live? To an extent, obviously not intrusively, but it's just to paint a picture of what is the world that we live in around us that we know as London. So yeah.
So interestingly, I mean, I think that's great that you've got a passion for your hometown and putting it on the map. It's already an international place, but giving it, really showing it in its best possible light and showcasing it around the world. I think as the economy kicks off again globally with people wanting to travel, I think London having more of a footprint digitally will attract more people to come here. The economy benefits, etc. So it's good on all sides. Local
Yeah.
businesses will thrive through stuff like that. So the question that I think that comes to my mind is, for Pembridge Media as a business, what
Mm-hmm.
who would be your ideal client? And so are these estate agents? Are these local businesses? Are you just creating video content for estate agents, or is this for anybody that wants to showcase London, that's or their local area? Sorry, that you're the people to come to.
Yeah. So I would say local area would definitely be one. Estate agents, yes, but I think we want to even broaden it out beyond estate agents. We'd like to get in touch with like developers, architects, interior designers, even construction, because these are all the things that, these are all the industries that make up even the property industry alone and contribute to London to what it is as well. And I think it's not limiting it because, again, this is a series about London. And I think we can obviously highlight part of the properties because that's where my expertise comes from, but it shouldn't be limited to it alone. And I think as well, like I said, local businesses is a must because that goes in the community. We've actually just filmed the second segment of what is going to be our first community episode. That's going to be quite exciting, where we've actually filmed a football club in West London, a karate club in kind of Deptford, Greenwich area, and then we're going to go back to West London to film a judo club. And these are quite different because you wouldn't expect somebody who's doing properties to now show kind of sports activities, what's going on. But I saw it as, no, we absolutely should be showing it because if somebody's, again, looking for a property or not even just looking for a property, if they want to know about London, these are the different things that you can find in London. Not everything in London is visible, on the street. Some things are behind closed doors. Some things are in, community centres, but there is still always a lot happening. And I think that is sometimes, we're going to try and put cameras in places where, well, not literally, but as in we're trying to, get behind places that you may not see, and are really, having a positive impact on their local communities and also the wider aspects of it as well. Because again, it goes back to, for example, if I had an applicant who was a family and they've got kids, they want to know where the kids' school are, but you get extra brownie points if you can say, look, there's a club for them to to do this and do that, and just different activities, because then you're already taking a lot of pressure and you're actually adding them a lot of value to their search, and also you're painting the area in a very good light because you're giving them options to see what is life actually like in this area? What is there to do? Because a lot of things can easily be overlooked just even by driving past. You may not realize, actually, is this what was always here all this time? And that's the most important thing we want to get out of this as well.
So so just going back to the whole Ryan Serhant thing.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms he does courses and stuff. Did you ever do one of his courses?
I have not, no.
No.
I'll be
So
honest with you.
from what he was saying, I mean, I know that obviously he creates a lot of video content. He does his vlogs on YouTube and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's obviously for his brand. So really, Pembridge Media is putting a pedestal, like giving everybody else the pedestal and giving everybody else the platform to, well, the content, the the ability to be able to create their own content. And that's what Pembridge Media ultimately is doing.
So we're going to be behind the creation of the content for now. We're not at the stage yet where we're going to have the platform where others can create their own content and put it on our channel. That will inevitably come at a later date, but it's not going to happen straight away. But for us, it's more about us kind of creating that experience. And I think one of the key things I've mentioned to my guys as well, now that we've done like the first stages of like property tours and area tours, now we really want to get in touch with like business owners or business people who work in the business and really like highlight the people that work, you know, in these places, the people that work in the communities or that do different things, different areas, because I think the key thing we want to get across is the people that make London move as well. I know I've said a lot of things about London, but I think the people aspect of it is something that I'm very passionate about because of just my natural nature. And I think that's kind of what I would like to get across with us, you know, throughout this series as a result.
So I'm just imagining being a developer myself. I've got a nice, tidy 4-unit scheme in Southeast London. It's going to be bringing to the market, you know, 4 duplex 1-bedrooms, the commercial conversion. It's in a nice setting, although it's, you know, it needs some really good marketing to be able to really bring it to life. So Southeast London is not necessarily like the glitz and glam of Mayfair, but you might be able to go to a local restaurant, meet the restaurant owner, merge that person into the video, weave that person into the video to say, look, you know, this is a great area. I've had this restaurant for 20 years, and we've had so and so arrive here. You might not have heard of us, but it's a great area. And then you go back to the property. So developers will come to you to really create a promotional video that will be able to not only show off the ins and outs of the building, but also the people behind the local area that makes the local area special.
Absolutely, because I think that's a point that can be easily missed, is the local area has a massive importance on decisions in properties. It has a huge importance because I think depending on what the area is or how the area feels to the applicant or the person who's looking, can sometimes be also a decision maker as well in itself, because that in itself sometimes can land as a compromise or, you know, quite a good factor to make a decision. And I think for us, as you just said perfectly, if you've got a property or you've got a development, well, first of all, we'd like to get the developer in and whoever else they want to get in, if it's the architect or designers, and actually walk and talk us through. Because as much as I can go in and talk about every single thing, like I'm very good at doing that, I've been doing it, it was my job and I did it very well. But equally, I don't always want to be the person having to speak constantly, because I think there's more to it than just it being this property where possible. It may not always be possible. And if that's the case, listen, I'm going to make an absolute star out of it anyway. So rest assured, if you don't want to be on camera, that's absolutely fine. But equally, I think it adds more of a personal touch that, oh, these buildings were made by this developer and this developer also made other buildings, and people connect with people rather than it just being, oh, I've seen this property and that's it. Like, no, this property was developed by such and such, you know, developer or designer, because I've seen their other work. And what would make you remember, you know, kind of an object or a property or something consistent is normally a connection to a person. It's always easier to remember a connection to a person and then the associated, you know, things that come with that person, as opposed to, you know, just the objects themselves and then the person. It normally works person first, then everything else that comes through it, at least in this industry anyway. And again, it comes back to like the local area where, you know, this is where everyone is. So yeah, 100%.
And have you ever thought about, because obviously now you're going to be behind the camera. Obviously, we're doing this today where if you're watching this on YouTube, we're in front of the camera. If you listen to this on Spotify, you're only listening to us. But are you ever thinking about becoming a presenter yourself on these videos? Is that not necessary really? Or is that case by case?
I would still be a presenter on the videos. Majority of them, I would still be a presenter. Obviously, if it gets super busy and at that point in the schedule, then I may not be able to do every single one, but I would definitely want to be presenting, because I think as well, for the audience, it gives a level of familiarity. And I think as well, that's what we kind of want to build it off of. So I don't really want to be off camera, at least for a good while, because I think as well, but also it's good to see kind of an interaction and engagement on camera, on screen, because I think even just seeing a genuine human interaction from a conversation and explanation, and I think that in itself can come across really well on camera when done right, of course. And I'm naturally a people person, so I'm going to make it as best as possible as well, and vice versa.
I'm thinking like moving in from where you were at Foxtons as a letting agent, being massively successful there, and then moving into this media space. It's a
Mhm.
little bit of a sidestep. It's you're still kind of within. It's like almost like saying a photographer who does the internals of properties for estate agents. It's yes, you're in the property industry, but you're not really in that day to day of doing property transactions or anything like that. So with this sidestep, do you ever see yourself coming back into the day-to-day game of being an agent or anything else in the investment or agency space?
Absolutely, 100%. Rest assured, it's a sidestep, and we can call it that. But rest assured, I am coming back. There's no way I'm sitting on this. I'm having withdrawal symptoms even now from my job, like as in a good way, because I actually miss being on the front line and being in touch with people, being a negotiator as well. Like that's been a bit of a challenge for me. It's kind of stepping away from that environment which I enjoyed so much. I thrive off of it. One, the competitive side, but also two, meeting people side as well, and also the value of helping others. I miss that a lot. So I will definitely be returning, but when I am returning, I'm not just returning as, oh, this guy was the number one at Foxtons, he was really well, he's one of the top negotiators. It's like, no, I'm doing a lot more because I now have my platform on top of that, and then we can now move it forward. So for me, it might seem like a side step, but the next step forward that comes will be a very big step. So this is the intention and build up to it. But in the interim, I think the most important thing is to focus on the media, because I like to do things properly. I don't like to try and juggle too many things at the same time, because that's one of my kind of strengths is I can focus on something really well. But if I start, spreading my efforts too far thin, I won't get the results I want. So I want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
focus on this for now. And then as a result, after that, literally it'll be jump back in. And now, because I've done both of them, I will now be able to bring them together, because I've given both of them individual amounts of time to understand, okay, how can I actually become an expert and essentially a champion in these roles.
And the interesting thing for me is the when you mentioned the likes of the two probably most prominent digital media strategists in the real estate game at the moment, being
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Daggers and
Tyrone
Tyrone
Ash.
Ash.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of what they're doing, and where obviously, I mean, they position themselves as super prime real estate generally, whereas you're saying I can go a little bit further afield and have a similar impact in the digital space for more everyday people, if you like. And am I right in thinking that that's kind of how you're positioning yourself?
I would say kind of yes. I don't necessarily want to put it on a direct comparison with them, because I think each one does what they do very well. And I don't want to draw a comparison too early, because I'm still in the stages of building what I'm building myself. But genuinely speaking, I would say yes. Actually, I'm trying to work out what's going to be the best way to put this, because realistically, I would actually say that even though we're focusing on London, it might seem like an everyday people. I think for ours, it's more of a focus of how much attention, but not necessarily just attention for the sake of it. How much more can we bring to the property industry, and how much more can we get out of it as well? And I think for me, it's breaking it down from all the layers that have been presented to it as a property industry, and really just focusing on the core, which is people. Because when you start to focus on the core, which is people, you can really start to move around as well. And I think there's prime areas that are outside of central London. It's not just all figured in to the prime central London, and even in the country as well. But I think it comes down to connecting with people, and then as a result, that will help launch the property business further afield, and then we're going to see how it goes. And like I said, most important thing is to focus on showcasing London first as the home base, and then naturally moving that out.
It's all about the people. That's why this channel is called Property People.
Property people, you see, perfect match.
Pardon me. Okay, so the digital channels. So we mentioned YouTube, you've got TikTok, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Twitter, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook, you've got Snapchat, you've got so many now. Which ones are the ones that we should be focusing on? Which ones are the ones that have caught your attention that you're going to be focusing on?
YouTube is number one, 100%. without question. YouTube's number one because YouTube, it's the best for video content creation at this level. So even though I'm doing videos, I actually want to work with like actual cinematographers and people who take this as their craft as well. Because I think if anything you do, you want to work with the best people who have a passion in their own crafts, and mixing them two together works very well. And because we want to focus on details, attention to details, and making, an experience, the best platform for it undoubtedly is going to be YouTube. Second reason is because of the viewer retention rate. You are naturally going to get a much longer viewer retention rate on YouTube than any other platform because it's a video platform. And when a viewer goes on there, or a user, they're already in tune to be watching videos of 10 minutes plus. So as a result, you're naturally going to get a much better feedback and engagement, and people are going to watch your content and pay attention to the details. Instagram and LinkedIn are kind of I would say the additional platforms or the supporting platforms. The reason why I call them supporting, I would say Instagram is, we like Instagram, but it doesn't tell the best story for us for what we're doing. I think in pictures it will, but I'm not a massive fan personally of Instagram myself. I'm just being honest when I say that, more so because I think it's good at showing like pictures, elements of who you are, which that will be doing more of, and that's the part I enjoy about it. And you don't have to put as much effort into the content. Or when I say the effort, it doesn't have to go through the same editing process and the whole process of actually putting on a production. Whereas for YouTube, for example, but equally, I think it does give that element of that extra touch, because I think YouTube can also add a bit of distance as well, where it's like, oh my God, this guy's on YouTube. Who is he? He's a bit of a mystery. Whereas Instagram is that one step closer to the person that you actually are. But equally, I think for the content that we want to create, because we want to focus on detailed content, really passionate and projects as well, YouTube is still going to be primary. And then LinkedIn is the professional kind of platform for professionals. I think it's a very good platform. I'm not the best at using it right now. I'll put my hands up and say it. I definitely will start to post more on there as well. I think it's more for us right now is focusing on the production side and what we're actually getting with first, and then eventually working more into the other social medias. But I would say, those are the three that we target. We probably will then open it up to TikTok at some point, but I would probably put TikTok on pause just for a short moment, because I don't want to focus on too many apps at once, because quality is going to be very important for us. I think that's not something we can compromise on. And I think knowing why we're putting things on certain platforms is going to be the best. And then I guess finally is the algorithm that comes with YouTube is much better than Instagram, hands down.
So YouTube is the number one. I mean, that makes sense to me. That's why I put property people videos on YouTube. And it's really, I tried to make it a YouTube channel, although we do the audio, but we do try to share some of the content across other platforms as well, because not everybody's on YouTube constantly. So it's good to spread out. But I mean, what you're doing is I think very relevant to the 21st century way of life, to the way of business. It's funny actually, because the last few people we've had on Property People have all had some kind of digital media impact on me in some, like we've either met through some sort of digital platform. We might not have met in person, similar to us. So it's I think it's just the way of the world now. So whoever I think can embrace it and really harness it and make the most of it, I think will have huge rewards. And I wish you all the best. It's been really, really good catching up with you, Lamar.
Thank you very much, Sam.
I'm quite curious to see how this journey goes. And if people wanted to find you, what's the best way they could catch up with you and check out your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So it'll be Lamar Joseph. If you just go on YouTube, you type that in, it will come up pretty much straight away. And then for Instagram, it will be Lamar Joseph _. And then for LinkedIn, it will be my name, Lamar Joseph, as well. You'll pretty much come up with those. That's the best place where you can catch me. And obviously, if you want to send me a message, I'd say Instagram or email would be the best. But you can find those because we've got all the links and everything on there as well.
Happy days. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Sam, thank you very much as well. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in today. We've got lots more super active property people coming up, so keep up to date. Click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, leave us a comment, share us and find us across social media, and we'll see you next time.